My name is Representative Mark Kahrs, and along with Representative Steve Brunk, we've called this press conference today on Good Friday to once again draw attention to the marijuana referendum that Wichita residents will vote on next Tuesday. And we're here to share with you our reasons why we oppose it, the illegality of the referendum, to urge Kansas citizens next Tuesday, Wichita citizens, to vote no on this referendum. Joining us here today is the Kansas Secretary of Corrections, Ray Richards, the Kansas Secretary of Department of Children and Families, Phyllis Gilmore, Sedgwick County Sheriff Jeff Easter, and Sedgwick County District Attorney Mark Bennett may be here a little bit later. There are some outage issues in Cheney, and he may not be able to be with us here. We all stand here in agreement opposing this referendum. By the way, also several representatives behind me, Representative Blake Carpenter, and Representative John Whitmer. We are all here today unified in opposition to this referendum, and we'll all share our unique perspectives as to why we oppose it. Some quick background. Representative Brunk and I previously provided the Wichita City Council with numerous reasons to not place this referendum on the April 7th ballot. Among those was a letter from the Office of Revisor of Statutes clearly stating that the state law supersedes a local ordinance and that even if this ballot referendum prevailed next week, it would have no legal effect, causing great unwarranted confusion among the citizens of Wichita and setting up a costly and avoidable lawsuit from the Kansas Attorney General's office. Additionally, Kansas Attorney General Derek Schmidt last month issued Attorney General Opinion 2015-4, that should be in your press packet, stating in very clear terms that this referendum is illegal and defective on several levels. First, the process followed did not meet the statutory requirements for ordinances to be proposed by initiative in referendum. Secondly, the proposed ordinance is defective in that it contains significant subject matter that is administrative in nature, which violates state law. And third, and really most important, the proposed ordinance, if approved, would conflict with state law in numerous ways and would be void and have no legal effect. Simply stated, under the Kansas Constitution, the City of Wichita lacks legal authority to adopt this ordinance that clearly conflicts with state law. Despite the Kansas Attorney General's request that the City of Wichita withdraw this illegal referendum, and knowing that a lawsuit against the City of Wichita would follow if this referendum prevailed, the City of Wichita refused to take the necessary steps to prevent this illegal referendum from being placed on the April ballot. The Wichita Eagle in a recent article profiled some interesting statistics related to marijuana arrests in Wichita, and I think they're worth repeating here. People arrested for marijuana in Wichita also faced other charges in 78 to 88% of cases filed since 2010. And nearly 60% of overall marijuana arrests here in the city were for felonies. Clearly, we are not talking about some innocuous drug here that is fun and harmless to its abuser and our community. The citizens of Wichita should weigh heavily the potential outcome of moving towards the decriminalization and eventual legalization of marijuana in our community and its negative impact on our children and our families. As a small business owner, the business community who desires a well-trained and sober workforce to hire from should ask itself if this is the type of ordinance which is productive or counterproductive and harmful to our business community. Is this the type of ordinance that will attract the type of businesses and citizens we want in our community? Our first speaker is Secretary of the Department of Children and Families, Secretary Phyllis Gilmore, and I'd ask that you keep all questions until all the speakers have made their comments. Secretary Phyllis Gilmore.
Thank you, Representative. It's good to be in Wichita. I am Phyllis Gilmore, the Secretary of the Kansas Department for Children and Families, and I am also a licensed clinical social worker. So I speak at this in a couple of different roles, this entire situation. I have seen firsthand the impact that marijuana use has on adults and their ability to be productive and self-sufficient. I've counseled many folks in that arena. More importantly, though, I've seen the devastating impact parental drug use can have on children in their own home. Wichita is all too familiar with perhaps the worst case that demonstrates that last point. Last summer, in the very hottest part of the summer, a 10-month-old baby girl was left strapped in a car seat as she suffered an unthinkable death, and I mean unthinkable, that you would not want me to describe it to you. It is that horrendous. And she was unable to escape the heat or her car seat, while her foster parents were inside the home getting high on marijuana. Their lack of good judgment and thoughtlessness, made worse by drug use, are the reason for that little girl's death. She had no second chance. As proponents of this bill are wanting, she had no other chances at life. The ballot question before Wichita voters is one step closer to decriminalizing marijuana, making it that much easier for these sorts of tragedies to happen. As the state's child welfare agency, it is our job, in fact our obligation, to protect innocent children who can't protect themselves. That is the protection, and every child earns the right to be protected by all of the voters. We put them at greater risk of harm when we tell the parents a double message: it is okay to get high, or lessen the penalty for possession offenses. In this fiscal year alone, we've already seen 412 children in Kansas removed from their home. That's 412 since the 1st of July, for the primary purpose of parents' substance abuse. And that number doesn't include meth use. 19% of all removals last fiscal year were primarily due to parents using drugs. You can see why that is such a serious concern to the Department for Children and Families, when that is the 19% of children removed. The impact that our social workers see when they go out, they see parents who use drugs typically have impaired judgment, neglectful behaviors, and an inability to cope, making it very difficult to parent safely. And they readily admit that after they've received treatment and rehabilitation. The nature of addiction itself causes the addict to put the need for that substance as a priority over everyone and everything, and that includes a parent for their child. That substance is important, and marijuana is a gateway drug that leads to abuse. Children are at risk for coming into contact with the substances through inhalation, through breastfeeding, picking it up in the home and ingesting it. It creates an unsafe environment. There is an association additionally between drug abuse and violence. Mothers who use drugs may prostitute themselves in order to obtain their drugs. Children are often witnesses to these activities and sometimes even victimized. It is always our goal at DCF to keep children in their home with the parents when that is a safe option. Far too often, children are removed because parents put their addiction to drugs before children. And when you stop and think about, we talk about removing children as if we're talking about eating an ice cream cone because it's so common. But that is one of the most intrusive things government does to families, is remove a child. It is one of the most traumatic things, perhaps the most, that can happen to a child, to be taken, maybe being awakened from their afternoon nap and just taken from the home. A child who has no understanding of why or where they're going. Or maybe a child that's a kindergartner is at school and they don't get to return home and they're taken away. That is a horrible thing to do to a child, and one that we at the Department for Children and Families do not take lightly. But when it is weighed against a child death as happened here in Wichita, obviously we have to go with the safe option, no matter how traumatic that option is. Reducing the penalty for marijuana possession makes it much easier for parents to go home after an arrest and continue to use drugs, making it that much harder for our agency to protect the children in their care. Thank you.
We'll next introduce our Kansas Secretary of Corrections, Ray.
Thank you. My name is Ray Roberts, and I'm the Secretary of Corrections. I'm here because I think marijuana is a gateway drug, and I think it is addictive, and I think the research shows that 9% of those that use marijuana routinely become dependent on it, and those that start using marijuana as teens, they're 17% dependent on that. I'm responsible for 9,700 adults in prison, 300 juveniles, and we provide grant funding for 8,400 people in community corrections among the 31 judicial districts. And I can tell you that substance abuse and mental health issues drive a lot of the things that cause people to come to prison. And when they leave, we know that a large percentage of those individuals that leave on parole come back because of substance abuse related problems. I know in the state of Colorado, they have done surveys on those impaired drivers that are pulled over for seemingly under the influence, and they found that 12.5% of those individuals that were impaired were marijuana impaired in the state of Colorado. And so I guess in closing, I certainly agree with a lot of what Secretary Gilmore had indicated, but decriminalizing marijuana or taking steps to get closer to that is probably not in the best interest of the criminal justice system. It's not in the best interest of the people of the state of Kansas, from my perspective.
Thank you. And Representative Steve Brunk.
Thank you. Representative Kahrs has actually already articulated much of what I wanted to say, so I'll maybe change just a little bit. Certainly clearly disappointing with the city after numerous opportunities for them to be able to not put this on the April 7th ballot. And the issue, I want you to understand that the issue is that this all along we knew was an illegal referendum. It wasn't presented correctly. There were numerous requests on the referendum and the petition that were administrative in nature that just simply could not be put on the ballot based on Kansas state law. And so all of this started out, quite frankly, as just some friendly advice to the city to say, you can't do this, and we took it out of our opinion and put it into an Attorney General's opinion to show that that it's backed up by state law and also by Supreme Court precedent. There was a 13-page document from the Attorney General, which I believe many of you have. It's been passed out today showing that evidence. And I also see people here from the Marijuana Reform Initiative. I mean, they're glad they're here. Our message to them from the very beginning as well has been that you're knocking on the wrong door. I really appreciate citizen activism. I've been involved in a number of issues myself in a very similar way. And so our message from the very beginning is that this is not the right mechanism in order to be able to get the law changed. The right place to go is to the state, and that's been our simple message to them all along. So again, the issue here today, from my standpoint, while I agree with the previous speakers, is not necessarily the Marijuana Reform Initiative. The issue has been that this is an illegal petition and an illegal referendum. The topic is Marijuana Reform Initiative. Change the topic. Crack cocaine reform initiative, methamphetamine reform initiative, or take it out of illegal drug use. Breaking and entering reform initiative, assault and battery reform initiative. The issue is that it still is an illegal petition and an illegal referendum, regardless of what the topic is. And again, just to be clear, I clearly agree with it. I agree with the sentiments that Secretary Gilmore and Secretary of Corrections has already articulated here. So let me just say this going forward. Our message today, why we're asking the citizens of Wichita to vote no on this referendum, just a couple of reasons. One is that it really creates a certain amount of confusion among the electorate. Should this pass, and it may, should this pass, there may be people that actually think that there is no longer any legality to this, that it is simply an infraction, which is not even a legal term, and that they would only be penalized a nominal amount of money. And that's just simply not the case. Going forward, we want the voters to know that should they still be caught doing this, that the state laws absolutely still apply, and the state will continue to enforce state laws. And so we want to clear that up to make sure that there's not any confusion among the electorate whatsoever. Secondly, frankly, there's the taxpayer expensive money. The Attorney General's office will have to take action against the City Council, and so we would hope that that would be preventable. So going forward, for a variety of reasons, but those two in particular, we're asking the citizens of Wichita on Tuesday to vote no, and then also for the people that are here for the Marijuana Reform Initiative, if you want to continue this quest, knock on the right door. Knock on the door of the state, because that's where the law is that needs to be changed. Let me separate this out also from within that organization. I believe there are a number of people that want to talk about medical marijuana. And again, for us, that's a totally separate topic. For those of you that are interested in that topic, would encourage you to affiliate with doctors, with physicians, with pharmacists to bring some medical evidence to the table so that the state can have hearings and perhaps take appropriate action on that. And so I think that would, for the moment, conclude my comments, and we'll turn this back over to Representative Kahrs.
Thank you, Representative Brunk. We've got several state officials that are willing to take any questions that the media may have. If there's any questions from media for anybody.
I think that it's pretty obvious that alcohol kills a lot of people too, and probably far more children, adults, and others have been killed by alcohol abuse. So will you guys, any of you, be lobbying to ban alcohol in Kansas or in Wichita?
Well, we currently regulate alcohol in the state of Kansas. And the point here is that this referendum is illegal. It wasn't properly filed. It contravenes state law. And so that's our point here. It's illegal and have no legal effect.
Would it be safer to regulate marijuana?
Are there any questions from other media here? All right, thank you very much for coming. Appreciate
Safer to
it.
regulate marijuana?
There was a question here about did we take off from the state legislature to be here, and the answer is no. While this is state legislative work, yesterday we concluded what would be our regular session, and so today for the next 2.5 weeks, it's in a time when all of the bills that we have passed are being printed. They're being looked at by the administration. The governor then will either sign or veto those particular bills. We will go back, I think it's on April the 30th, for what's commonly called the wrap-up session, and then the legislative work will resume. So the short answer to the questions coming from behind me are no, we're here on our own time and our own dime, and thank you for that question.
All right, well, I want to thank all the officials that drove down from Topeka and that have taken time off today to be here. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
So they did take time.
What about HB 2049? Stalled it. About espionage. About HB 2011.
It's gold. Gold.